Our first session this afternoon is the new administration's education and workforce agenda takes shape. Please welcome to the Horizon stage Karishma Merchant, Vice President of Policy and Advocacy at Jobs for the Future. Nick Moore, Acting Assistant Secretary of the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the U.S. Department of Education. And Taylor Stockton, Chief Innovation Officer for the U.S. Department of Labor.
Welcome. I'm excited to be up here with these two leaders in the Trump administration. We have a short time, so we're just going to dive into it if that works. So here at Jobs for the Future, our policy vision is called No Dead Ends. We're really focused on advancing policies to eliminate no dead ends for learners and workers as they pursue economic opportunity. Typically, the first 100 days of a new administration is seen as a time where policy vision and executive orders are really rolled out to form the new administration's policy priorities. We're about 130 days or so into this administration, and I'll be quite honest, I think we're moving at a breakneck pace compared to what we've seen in previous years. So looking back, what were some of the key objectives that you think the administration accomplished at DOL and ED as you're trying to drive economic success for people, businesses, and communities, and what should we expect to see in 2025?
Yeah, I think on the labor policy side, the objectives are what we're already seeing to come through fruition so far, which is that when you look at the economy and when you look at the labor market, the reality is, especially in light of recent jobs reports, wages are up, jobs are up, unemployment is down, and inflation is down. And I think that's the type of economy that this administration is looking to create, because we believe that's better for the American workers, and it's going to put more workers on the path to the American dream. And so I think looking forward and what you can expect to see for the rest of the year is really, it boils down to a focus on how do we prepare more workers for the jobs of the future with an incredible focus on the AI-driven economy. And so I think really zooming out from labor, this administration and President Trump specifically feels strongly on America being the global leader in artificial intelligence, and workforce and talent is a huge, huge piece of that. And so that's what you'll see is these executive orders around AI literacy for all Americans to make sure that more Americans can really share in the prosperity that we know AI can create in this economy.
And I want to say thank you for having me, and I'm glad everybody's eating so that we're not standing between you and lunch. It's always a bad place to be in. The hallmark of this country has always been mobility, economic, geographic, and social mobility. And what the Trump administration is doing is realigning the focus of our national public workforce system and education system to the needs of our employers, students, and job seekers, so that we can reinvigorate that level of mobility so that somebody's willing to start a business, to start a new job, to be able to move to another town, and not feel encumbered by the benefits cliffs that go along with the tapering off of means-tested transfer payments. It also means that we need to align the performance objectives for things like PERC and CTE and our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act programs with the goals of governors and states. You know, I came out of the state of Alabama, and it takes 40,000 people to increase the labor force participation rate in that state by 1 percentage point. But if you take a look at the outcomes for our WIOA programs, and this is endemic nationally, or CTE, we're just not producing enough talent through those programs to help governors hit those targets. So we've got to do more to get more of those dollars in the hands of training providers in states, and less of it to go to fund bureaucrats like me.
So Nick, on Secretary McMahon's first day, she released a memo titled Our Department's Final Mission. And that's aligned with the administration's stated goal to close the Department of Education. We've also seen a related executive order also released. While the Secretary has acknowledged that the department does play a vital role in certain areas, how is the administration approaching the potential closure of the Department of Ed?
Well, I get to work on education and the intersection of education and workforce. So within my purview, I can say that CTE and WIOA programs are aligned by design. It was always congressional intent for not only the planning cycle and the performance indicators for those programs to be more strongly aligned. So we're going to be working closely with Congress and working with other stakeholders to make the case and to build an argument for why PERC and CTE and the public workforce system truly need to be integrated.
Taylor, how is the administration thinking about interagency collaboration moving forward around workforce development, education, and training? You know, we've seen conversations around moving OCDE over to the Department of Labor, so kind of curious how you all are working together on that interagency collaboration.
Yeah, we're thinking about it very deeply, and it's funny, this is my first time on the government side of the table, but it's not my first time at JFF events. I've been going to events by JFF for the last decade, and so often for the past decade, there's these sessions and questions around how do we bring the silos of education and workforce together? How do we make sure that economic development, workforce development are working hand in hand? And I think the steps that you are seeing the Trump administration take are finally doing those types of unifying efforts that many in this space have been calling for so long. Because I think ultimately how this administration views a lot of these efforts are, it has to be about the entire human capital development life cycle. From the very early ages into the workforce development. And so I think an example of that you can already see this administration leading on is these executive orders. One around AI literacy and two around modernizing workforce development and apprenticeships. On both of those executive orders, there's clear mandate for commerce, for education, for labor, and for other federal agencies to work hand in hand. And so I think that's exactly what you can expect going forward. And I think the impact of that, you know, as you said, talking about the winding down of the Department of Education, sometimes we focus on the structural impact and get too in the weeds on that. But the real impact that I think all of us should be focused on is what is the impact on workers and learners? And the impact on workers and learners is more unified support of how all individuals can have access to economic opportunity.
So you both are bringing pretty unique lenses to your roles. Nick, you were working at the state level in the executive branch for Governor Ivey. And Taylor, you're coming from the private sector where you really focused on the future of work. Based on your experiences, how do you see innovative efforts in the field shaping or influencing the federal decision making that you all are a part of?
Well, beautiful thing about this moment in time is we've got the political momentum, the policy acumen, and the tech stack to be able to make all learning count. And we've seen there's been quite a bit of earnest and needed navel-gazing and different attempts to build out talent marketplaces that will allow any number of learning assertions to be developed into discrete employer-recognized competency statements. But what we really need to see is for there to be not some top-down approach, and we talk about this a lot, but at the federal level for there to be sort of a traffic cop or gatekeeper to say, this is the way that we can take unstructured data, because we know that we've got a federalized education workforce system. It will remain to be so. And so without asking people to procure some new technology that they don't already have, to be able to interoperate all of those systems of record, so that if I move from Alabama to Arkansas or from California to New York, I can take my learning with me. And that's going to add to that conversation around mobility, so that no matter what, you know that your learning is self-sovereign, it's not revocable. And in an era to where you're going to see people having between 5 and 30 different jobs in their lifetime, you need that type of modularity and portability for learning.
Taylor?
I'll just add briefly that I think I would sum a lot of these efforts up that this administration wants to remove barriers to innovation in all ways, but in particular for education and workforce, because for so long, as Nick pointed to, there's been a lot of great efforts going on, but a lot of times red tape and bureaucracy stands in the way of a lot of the great experiments happening. And so I think, one, we want to make sure that there's the level of flexibility at the state and other levels to have those experimental and innovative models. But then crucially, we also need the ability to scale those. And so I think a lot of what you'll see from this administration is more flexibility and more efforts that really provide the path for innovation for the private sector.
Great. So at JFF, we conducted a survey of registered voters that it really affirmed strong support for the federal role in helping Americans afford education and workforce training and really help unemployed individuals learn a new skill and find a new job. So most of the people in this room are grounded in the day-to-day work to help learners and workers succeed. From where you sit, what's one message that you want the audience to take away on what the federal government is doing to help learners and workers succeed?
Building off a point Taylor made earlier, many of us in this room go to lots of different conferences, and you have many different conversations about if you had the magic wand, what would we do to help strengthen the integration between secondary and post-secondary education and the world of work. We have that opportunity now. That's the work that we're doing. So the one takeaway, what I would ask you to do is to stand with us, to give us an opportunity to work with you to allow some of these solutions to come to fruition. It's going to take people being brave, being bold, the theme of this conference, because sometimes it is easy to just get comfortable with the status quo. And the kind of inertia tends back towards the status quo if you don't take drastic action, particularly in the early ages, to get a coalition of the willing, like the people in this room, to support, I think, some of the very appreciable policies that you will see coming out, not only the first 130 days, because to be honest with you, we had a lot of things we had to clean up in those first 130 days, but over the next several months, we're going to be calling on you directly with discrete opportunities to walk alongside us, and I hope you'll take that up when we come calling.
Taylor?
I think one of the biggest takeaways from this administration with the executive order around modernizing workforce development and apprenticeships is really the focus on accountability and transparency. But specifically what I would point to there is, especially in the age of AI and how much agility there needs to be in the system, we have to focus on models that are actually driving outcomes for learners and workers. And it's easy to come up on stage and say that, but to point to the slogan of this conference as well, I think it takes some level of bravery, some level of courage to actually distinguish between programs that may have positive intent, right? There's a positive intent of impact, but actually being brave enough to say that that's not enough. And we need to make sure that the programs that we are funding are actually having positive outcomes, because it's more important than ever in this era of AI. And so I think the administration's commitment and the Department of Labor and Department of Education's commitment is to focus on those programs that are actually driving outcomes and make sure more students and more workers have access to the American dream.
And I hope folks in the room will take you up on that offer. I know that you guys have open doors, so it's really exciting. If you all can join me in thanking Taylor and Nick for joining us today.
And we're ahead of schedule.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, guys.